Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So now guys, with the demise of Abba Kyari and the new chief of staff Ibrahim Gambari still settling in, the charge for seizing power positions is now in full pelt within the Aso Rock structure. Guys, I bring you this. Nigerian government strips ministers of powers to remove head of agencies. So now this is the headline that we're contending with, and this one you have to really switch on to understand what is being said here. Nigerian government strips ministers of powers to remove heads of agencies. So now let's now find out what intrigue is at play here. The federal government has stripped ministers of the power to relieve heads of agencies and parastatals under their ministry of their duties. This was disclosed by the Secretary to the Federal Government of the Federation, Boss Mustapha, in a circular to ministers. The circular issued on Tuesday is coming on the heels of the sacking of the Managing Director of the Power Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, Usman Mohammed, by the Minister of Power, Saleh Maman. According to the circular, ministers would no longer have the powers to sack the chief executive of agencies unilaterally. The circular also directed ministers to refer erring heads of agencies to the governing boards as the starting point of any disciplinary action. The circular also disclosed that President Muhammadu Buhari has approved a new disciplinary procedure for the chief executive officers in accordance with the Public Service Rules (PSR). The circular reads, "Accordingly, Mr. President has approved the following streamlined procedures for the discipline of the chief executive officers of government parastatals, agencies, and departments in accordance with the Public Service Rules (PSR). When an act bordering on serious misconduct against a chief executive officer is reported, it shall be the duty of the supervising minister through the permanent secretary to refer the matter to the governing board for necessary action in line with the relevant provisions and the principles guiding chapters 3 and 16 of the Public Services Rules. The board shall, in line with due process, issue him or her a query requesting an explanation with respect to the specific act/acts complained about. The board shall forward its findings and recommendations to the minister for further consideration and necessary action. The minister, after due consideration of the submission from the board, shall, on the advice of the permanent secretary, forward the minister's position along with the recommendations of the board and the explanation of the chief executive officer to the secretary to the federal government of the federation." So I need to pause there because this is the point that I was hoping to land on. This is now Boss Mustapha effectively sweeping up all of the powers that Abba Kyari had created for himself before Ibrahim Gambari is fully settled into his position. So this is effectively now Boss Mustapha telling all of the ministers in Nigeria, all of the ministers of Nigeria, all the ministerial positions, the occupants of those positions, to report to him. That is exactly what is just said now, and that is what this paragraph means. So let me just take that paragraph again, and you set it against the background of what I have just said. It says, "The minister, after due consideration of the submission from the board, shall, on the advice of the permanent secretary, forward the minister's position along with the recommendation of the board and explanation of the chief executive officer to the secretary of the government of the federation for processing to Mr. President for a decision." So the ministers now in Nigeria do not now have the powers anymore to sack the heads of the agencies that are within their ministry, because you have several agencies, of course, within most ministries. So they don't have the powers now to sack them anymore. And I agree with that, by the way, because a lot of the heads of these agencies are the ones actually doing any works that would impact on Nigeria or Nigerians. And the ministers there really are just there to collect dollars and sweep up as much wealth as they can. So it's a lottery win. It's like having the winning ticket to the lottery, being a Nigerian minister. So you just go there and call out all of the heads of departments to a meeting and tell them that, look, this is how much I want to be getting from you guys. So you go and work out through your agencies how you'll be submitting these monies to me. This is all they do. So these people now, they should not have the powers to sack the heads of parastatals and agencies, especially because a lot of these parastatals and agency heads will outlive the ministers, because the position of a minister is very much transient and it's very much at the will of the president, and whatever political wind blows, the guy can disappear immediately. But those heads of parastatals are the people really that keep the machinations of the department of the ministry, whichever ministry it is. They are the ones that keeps the machinations of the ministry churning. They're the ones that keeps the wheel turning. So now I agree that the ministers should not be able to sack these people without recourse to a higher authority, but that higher authority should not be the secretary to the government. But this guy, of course, has now swept up all these powers for himself. So he carries on. Upon receipt of the submission from the minister, the secretary to the government of the federation shall without delay cause an independent investigation. So now this is an additional power. So just let's just pause again. So the minister have already said they cannot sack heads of parastatals and agencies anymore without recourse to the presidency, and the recourse to the presidency would be to the secretary to the federal government, the secretary to the government of the federation. So that would be effectively to Boss Mustapha. So before they can sack the head of any agency or parastatal, they have to refer to Boss Mustapha. Boss Mustapha will then institute an independent investigation. These are its own words. And then he goes on to say, and advise Mr. President on the appropriate course of action. So the ministers, on coming to the conclusion that they need to remove the head of whichever place that they need to remove the head of, would then do all of these processes that has been described, which I agree with, and then they will then submit their findings and recommendations to Boss Mustapha, who will then do another independent investigation by his own office, not by the presidency, but by his own office, and then upon whatever comes out of that investigation, would then advise the president on the appropriate actions to take. So now I mean, I don't even have to add any more explanations to this, because it's all there in the guy's own words. So he's now taking supervisory charge of the ministers of the country. So the Boss Mustapha guy now has taken supervisory charge of the ministers of the country, which is I mean, why would they not report to the vice president? But then, of course, Yemi anyway, let's just leave Yemi Oshiba. It's almost like bullying now. Anytime you mention Yemi Oshibajo's name, they've just completely meshed and mashed him. He's just, I don't know, he's just there now doing praise and worship every morning and night. That's just, I don't know if he has any functions left, because of course these people should be reporting to the office of the vice president, and not, of course, to the office of the secretary to the federation, the secretary to the federal government, or whatever it's called himself. They should be reporting to Yemi Oshibanjo, not Boss Mustapha. But then, of course, Yemi Oshibanjo. Imagine if Atiku Abubakar was the vice president. Can you imagine Atiku Abubakar being treated in the same way that Yemi Oshibanjo is being treated? But then, of course, Yemi Oshibanjo is a docile, slow-paced man, who will just say, I will leave it all to God, though. This man is not a politician, Yemi Osinbajo. He should pack his bags and go back to Unilag to teach the future generation of Nigerian lawyers, which is his calling in life. He's not a politician, and he doesn't really belong amongst these sharks. They will eat him alive, which they have done already anyway, because he's a man now. He's the shell of a being now within that space. So Boss Mustapha is now also now taking charge over Yemi Osinbajo, but then of course what do you expect? So now let's just carry on. What else does he have to say? Upon receipt of the submission from the minister, the secretary to the government of the Federation, SGF, shall without delay cause an independent investigation and advise Mr. President on the appropriate course of action. The circular further added that it is the responsibility of the secretary to the government of the Federation to advise the president on the next course of action based on the outcome of the final investigation. This guy is now on a real power grab. This procedure shall serve as a mandatory guide, and all ministers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and any other public officer in similar supervisory position are enjoined to strictly abide by its content. For emphasis, on no account shall a minister of the Federal Republic unilaterally or arbitrarily remove a serving chief executive officer without recourse to the procedure contained in this circular, the secretary to the government of the Federation said. So Boss Mustapha said. So I mean, clear as day. I mean, there's really not much more to say on this. A power grab. So the vacuum that has been created by Abba Kyari's passing on, the scramble to take pieces of it. So this guy is now taking a very large slice of the cake. So the ministers will be reporting to the secretary to the government of the Federation, Boss Mustapha, effectively is what is being said here. So they are not reporting to the chief of staff. They are not reporting to the president. They are not reporting to the vice president. They are reporting to the secretary of the government of the Federation, Boss Mustapha, effectively. And this guy now has been able to move very, very quickly to get this large chunk of powers for himself. So now that is a dollar move. Of course, you have to understand this is a money move, because all of these ministers now, because you know that the Nigerian system operates on bags filled with dollars, but Ghana must go bags filled with dollars. So if these ministers now want to make any move within their ministry, and they have this understanding now that they have to report to Boss Mustapha, they don't go reporting to Boss Mustapha empty-handed. They go reporting to Boss Mustapha with a fist full of dollars. This is really the going on. So it's a money move really, and a power grab, because every power grab within the Nigerian structure is often underpinned by money. So it's a money move and a power grab, and a power grab predicated upon money moves. So this is now the going on now. This guy is now taking a huge slice of the empire that Abba Kyari created for himself very quickly before Ibrahim Gambari settles into position. Conversations in the comment section. Which way Nigeria? I think it was Sonny Okonsu that sang that song, and it's still relevant till today. Come share thoughts, but before you do that, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. Bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come tell me what you're making of this money move by this guy in the comment section. So I'll leave you here. Carry this conversation on with you in the comment section, but here I say peace.